Hi, my name is Christopher. This is Vegas Confidential, and we're going to be talking about real people with real stories from Vegas. So, Vegas Confidential, real Vegas, something that you're not going to hear anywhere else or see anywhere else. And today we have Micki Murphy. Micki.
Hello.
Micki Murphy is from Vegas originally, and she ended up moving to China for about 15 years of her life and worked as a singer. So a little bit about me. I actually lived in Taiwan collectively approximately 10 years. So I worked at a nightclub in Taiwan as a party MC. So I had to speak Chinese at work, and she could also sing one of their most famous songs in Chinese. So we got a lot in common, and there's not too many of us, foreigners. We're foreigners to them. We've been there for so long. I consider myself as a foreigner. And
Yes.
I've been there for so long. I consider myself as an egg, white on the outside, yellow on the inside.
Absolutely.
So we got a lot to talk about. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. So Micki, why don't you talk about, I want to know your experience in Vegas, what you were doing, and what made you, or what brought the opportunity for you to go to China, and when did you go?
Well, I had been living in Vegas. I had a house in North Las Vegas. I think I moved here like in 98. And I performed all over town. I was a part of the music community. I also toured with Sonny Turner, who was the former lead singer of the original Platters,
Nice.
and he's my musical father. And I was also doing contracts in Taiwan, 3-month contracts at the famous Brown Sugar.
Before you left?
Before I left,
Oh,
yes.
so you would go there like on a flight and come back
Yes.
home?
I would go there for 3 months.
How did you get that opportunity to do that?
Well, I actually I was called to a club to audition. The owners came to
Here.
Vegas looking for singers.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. From
And
Taiwan.
so yes, and
Nice.
so some other female singers, they contacted me like, Micki, they're holding auditions for Taiwan contract. Come on down. So I went down there and I sang, and they chose me as
Hell
one of
yeah.
the singers. So it was a wonderful experience. I continue to go back every year. Yeah. So and at one point I was actually booking singers for them.
Oh, that's so you were qualified. So I got to Taiwan, some random girl that had a nice ass in college, and I was like, yo, she got a nice ass. I'm gonna talk to her. I was like, what's up? Got a number, became my girlfriend, and then we bought a plane ticket to go to Taiwan together. She was actually Burmese, from Burma, Myanmar. So she was an immigrant from Myanmar that lived in Taiwan. And she was very poor, family's very poor. And she actually worked at an international hotel and met this rich Japanese guy. And they got together, and he paid for everything for her to go to America. And then I met her, and she didn't tell me she had a boyfriend. Anyway, I figured out she had a boyfriend, but I already bought this plane ticket to go to Taiwan. So I ended up going by myself. It's completely fucking random how I got there.
Wow.
And I stayed in her parents' house for a little bit. They liked me, but she didn't tell me she had a boyfriend. Anyway, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. This place is kind of cool. I'm gonna stay here and get a job. So I just randomly found a job as teaching English, because I did that before in Korea. And I'm like, got a job, and then I just ended up staying there for a couple years. Came back for America, and then went back. Actually, I came back to America, fucked up again because I just couldn't get my shit straight. Went back to Taiwan for like 7 years. So you were qualified to go. I was like, shit, I'm here. Let me just fucking survive like a little scoundrel.
Well, actually, especially in mainland China, you have to be sponsored for a visa. So from my performing at the Brown Sugar, I go.
By the way, Brown Sugar is a nightclub in Taiwan.
Yeah, so it's one of the top venues in Taipei.
Yep.
Yes, and so your name gets around because it's kind of a circuit for singers. There's only so many of us that do that international circuit, and so the owner heard about me of another club and he was planning to open a venue in Beijing, China.
Nice.
And so he had somebody come around and to meet with me and asked me for my EPK, my promo. And
press kit, right?
Yes, my press kit.
Gotcha.
Yes, and so he watched my show. He asked me for that, and he told me the owner, this Taiwanese owner, is opening a venue in Beijing, and he would like, he's interested in you for the grand opening. So so I was like, great. So my contract ended. I went back to America. I was doing 3-month stints in Taiwan every year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I came home.
So you love Taiwan. I'm sure you had an amazing time, right?
Yes, absolutely. Everything, the food.
Me too.
I like to walk. I am a people watcher. I'm fascinated by culture, and there's so much rich history.
Yes.
America is a young country by comparison.
Yes.
So you see structures that are over 2,000 years old. People can know their heritage. They can go back 10 generations. And being a Black American, I can't go past my grandparents.
Exactly.
I don't know where. So I've been fascinated, and they preserve their historical sites so well. So I'm always fascinated.
Did you ever ride scooters there?
Not in Taiwan.
Yeah.
I rode on the backs of them, fearfully. Just somebody driving me around, especially like during the holidays. It was so crowded, I couldn't get a taxi, and so they would pick me up on these scooters. It's just terrified.
Oh my God! It's like that's like my favorite thing, man. Like,
what? Everybody, all the guys like the scooters.
Yeah.
But when it wasn't until I moved to Beijing that I eventually bought a scooter, but then it was too terrifying to ride it. I rode it like I would ride it at night in the wee hours when there was no one up the street, but 3 times during the day.
That actually makes sense, because every single person that I know who drove a scooter to work, every day as an English teacher, that's what I did.
Right.
Got into an accident. We always say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yes.
It's a guarantee that you're going to get into an accident at some point. And the reason why is a red light is a suggestion.
That's the same thing I say.
It's not a law.
Drive so fast.
It's a suggestion.
Absolutely. It's same in China.
So it's like this is actually I feel like it makes me a very safe driver in America, because no one follows the rules. So you can't, in America, a lot of people blindly follow the laws. Like, oh, red light, stop light. I have the right of way, so I'm going.
Right.
Okay, well, you might get hit.
Right.
In China, in Taiwan, it's like, I was like, there are no rules. No one's going to protect you. You just have to look out for yourself, regardless of the stop sign or stoplight or anything.
Absolutely.
So I feel like it makes me a safer driver.
Right.
Because if something happens, I will evasive maneuver to not get hit, because anything can happen in Taiwan and China.
Yes. Well, China is so much bigger than Taiwan.
Right.
It's very vast, and it's also the most populated country in the world, making up almost 1/4 of the world's population.
It's insane.
It's insane. Yes. So, there's so many. A lot of people still ride bicycles. So there was actually a famous song written about bicycles in Beijing specifically, and so just millions and bikes and they use electric bikes. They don't use gas powered. So they don't make any noise.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So there's no, and then they have lights, but they don't turn them on because they want to preserve the battery. So somebody just whiz past. I've almost gotten hit many times.
At nighttime?
Yeah.
No lights, just
no lights. Yes, and it's just silent. Yeah, and so I've almost gotten hit numerous times.
I've gotten hit by a bicycle rider on a sidewalk in Taiwan. It was a kid out of nowhere going hell with this, bam. Yeah, that's. Yeah.
So, and I walk. I could walk 8 to 10 miles a day, because that's just exercise for me, and I just love to be out there and just seeing the sights, and also it's safe. There's no street crime.
Right.
No one has guns.
So let's talk about that. When I first went to Taiwan, the first week, and this is fucked up in American point of view, I saw 7-year-olds walking around at like midnight or 1 a.m. and I'm like, what the fuck? How come nobody's kidnapping them?
Right.
But it's a fucked up American mentality that I even thought that way.
Absolutely.
But it's because the streets are safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No one does that shit.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you something that happened to me one time when I was performing in Beijing. And so I'm coming home. I would carry a little bag because I changed costumes. So I had a little roller bag. And so I'm walking towards my building, and a man, he had his penis out.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I'm thinking he's some mad, possible rapist. And I'm just, and I just, I start running.
Yeah.
And he's just looking at me like, like, what's wrong with her? But at the time, I ran into my building, and
but it was in public, though, right?
Yes, he was in public. Okay. So I called the manager of the club, and I was just like, there's a man, like, you need to call the police. There's a man, he's got his penis out. And he's just started cracking up, laughing. And I'm like, he's like, Micki, he does have to pee. Like, nobody, he would not bother you. But so that's something common.
Peeing outside. Oh, God, I got stories.
So I had to get used to that. You're walking by and somebody's just right up against a wall or a tree, so.
I don't even want to say it, man. Like, but this was ingrained in my head. Like, I was walking to work one day in Taiwan, and like, yeah, you're right, they pee outside. Like, there was like this mother who had like a little girl with a dress, and it's just like, it's super inappropriate, but like she like lifted up her daughter's dress to just pee, and like lifted it, like just pee right down the street. And I was just like walking, I was like, oh, Jesus. Like, oh my God, why are they doing that in front of everyone? That is super inappropriate. Like, this having their kids, parts out peeing in public. Like, I'm just like, oh, goodness gracious.
They're toddlers and infants. They don't use diapers. Okay. So they have cutouts for their genitals. So when they have to go, they just squat and go anywhere. So it's just part of their culture. And there are things that we do that they find strange or inappropriate.
Okay, so fair enough. So I have actually never lived in China, but I don't know, man. I was just stuck in my bubble in Taiwan. I was in Taiwan for 10 years, so I know Taiwan. But a friend of mine lived in China, and he said that he saw, and this is how fast their wealth went from broke as fuck to like ultra wealthy. He saw this guy get out of a Bentley on the side of a road and take a shit in front of everybody.
Yep. Yes, that's absolutely true. They've gotten wealthy, and it's because all the big business wants to take advantage of Chinese laborers because and the poverty was so. I mean, I've seen their poverty, like what we call ghettos. It's
nothing.
It's wealth,
right?
By comparison, they call it the hutongs. And
the hutongs,
yes, they are. They live on gravel floors. They have no heat, and I mean it gets cold. And they don't use electricity. And it's just really, you're talking poor to the point that they're eating food that's not good food. And families stay together. There may be, it's common to see 3 generations.
Yes, I was going to say that too. And I was going to say that how America recently, if you look online, there's a lot of like a lot of kids or people that are in their 20s that as our country is our standard of living is falling dramatically.
Yeah.
Like, so kids nowadays are talking about, you know what? I'm done trying to live on my own. I'm going to move back in with my parents.
Yeah.
It's happening here now.
Well, I'll tell you why it's happening here. Because all the big businesses in Europe and America, they moved their manufacturing to China for the cheap labor. So they got rid of union protection. So, all the car manufacturers, electronics, appliances, even high-end designer, they all are made in China. So they're paying Chinese between $300 to $500 a month, and they're living better.
Yes.
And so now all these people have lost their jobs, And so, companies are going out of business. So it's turning it's people, there's increased there's an epidemic of homelessness because people can't afford to pay
In America.
Yes, in America.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Chinese wealth has grown exponentially.
Right.
But like you said, it was overnight. It started in the late 80s, early 90s, businesses moving to China to do their manufacturing. And, by the 2000s, they just like the super, super wealth. Incredible wealth. I've seen, even the club that I was hired to do the grand opening for, I was offered a year contract. It turned into 3 years.
Nice.
The club was huge. It was in a huge mall, brand new. It was all owned by one man. He owned apartment complexes across the street. Like, this man was worth billions of dollars. One man.
Damn.
Yes, the club had theater seating. And the club owner, he didn't care about how long it would take to build up the club. He had investors and so, it was just amazing to me to see all of this wealth. But at the same time, there was still extreme poverty.
Yes.
Like, I remember taking a photograph when I first arrived of a Bentley that was parked at the mall. And next to it was a bicycle that they had put like a 3-wheeled bike, and they had built a wagon on the back of it, and they were parked side by side. So somebody's pedaling, probably could fill up that wagon with heavy, supplies.
Right.
And he's pedaling with his feet. That's how.
You ever seen how many times have you seen a whole family on a scooter?
Oh my gosh. It used to terrify me. It used to be a family of 4. The woman's holding the baby, they got a kid, the man. It's just,
we always would say, like, that's dangerous. They do it all the time. The one time we heard that a whole family got killed on a scooter. Like, you have like a whole family, literally a baby. Like, it's crazy how they even do this. They should be acrobats, right? Like, how they have their whole juggle, their whole family.
Right.
I used to take my laundry. Actually, you know what? This is so ghetto. I actually moved on a scooter.
Oh,
like, I had like my
no,
packed my bags.
That's common. I'm used
Like,
to
I
that.
moved. Like, it's like it's like you make a joke of like somebody kicking a can down the street. What you doing? Moving? Like some homeless. That's a joke, right? And like I had like my bags like in the front plus back, and then like all the way up here, and I'm driving a scooter. Like, so I assimilated a little bit, but
Right.
But no, it's crazy to see.
Well, for China and Taiwan as well, they make purchasing and maintaining a vehicle extremely expensive, and so they consider the electric bikes in China, the scooters in Taiwan, as their vehicle. That's their car. That's their transportation, and so they maintain them and that's all they have.
Right.
So they're so good at riding. The women will sit side saddle and they're filing their nails. They're talking on the phone.
That's right.
And I would, the few times that I rode on the back, I'd be like gripping. They'd be like, not so tight, not so tight. I'm like, I'm screaming, I'm putting my nails in the, so yeah, they're just, they're comfortable.
No, I remember what I wanted to talk about. It was, okay. So about how poor, like, the poor people in America are rich compared to the poor people in China. I wanted to talk about that. Wanted to touch on that. So, lost my train of thought. You're gonna have to cut this, Chris. No, you're not now, but later. So I noticed what was very apparent to me and very strange to me was what it made me understand how, like, basically dating and your love life and marriage in America, and like you get to marry who you love, is a luxury, because these people are so poor. They marry for security first.
Yes.
It's like they don't get to choose who. They don't like, oh, I love this person, I'm passionate about this person. Who gives a shit? You're
Exactly.
starving.
Right.
You have to marry someone that can provide for you, because they're so fucking poor.
Right.
It's like you don't get to marry who you love. So I've seen a lot of Chinese culture. You marry for security first, and if you want love and passion, you get a girlfriend or boyfriend after that. I've seen that very common in Chinese culture.
Well, also in China, I remember they only allowed one child up until 2016.
Holy
because they were trying to, to just quell some of the population explosion. And so if they got a girl first, there was a time when they were, I hate to say it, but they were murdering
Jesus
daughters
Christ.
because they wanted sons that could carry on their name, and they only allowed one child. And during my time living there, I met a lot of people that came from very poor families, and they would come up to the city from the country. And so there were people that were having multiple children because they didn't have any form of birth control that was affordable. And so these children are undocumented.
This is what I heard. Wait, I saw the documentary. You saw it firsthand. I saw it on
I
TV.
met people that told me their own story that were actually undocumented.
They're invisible.
Yes.
And, oh my
they will
God.
never get any benefits. They will never be able to leave China because they literally don't exist.
Oh my God. It's
Yes.
crazy.
One guy was telling his story, and it was just so heart-wrenching. Working, toiling on the farm. I think he had 3 siblings, and they used to call them by number because it wasn't, sometimes they didn't know if the children would survive because it was such a harsh reality, harsh winters,
Oh my God.
and poverty and food shortages, and so they're trying to eke out, and so, one or whatever.
So just to clarify, these are the kids that, like, if you had more than one child, you're the second or
Yes.
third or a girl.
Absolutely.
So this is the circumstance.
Yes. Or they would give the girl away to an older man, and he
Jesus.
would marry them. Usually he would marry them. If not, he would keep them as kind of a concubine. He needs
Oh my
somebody
God.
to
At what
feed.
age, though?
Oh, it could be 12,
Oh
14.
my God.
Yes. And so they could be, beaten and just treated like a sort of a sex slave or a maid, or, just doing chores. So they lived a harsh reality if they were born.
Okay, China's way different than Taiwan. They have way more rights in Taiwan than China. I mean, if that's what happened, like that should never happen in Taiwan.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, China was so populated.
Yeah.
And it's spread out. It's like America. They have, the east and the, and the west. They have the south and north where, it's cold up north, and then it's hot all year round. Like in Shenzhen, it's on the border of Hong Kong. So I've lived in 9 cities in China. So I really got to see a lot of the different areas and the different, the different climates and so forth. And also, China's made up of 56 different cultures.
What?
Yes.
What, are they different dialects?
Different dialects, but they
56?
all speak Chinese. Yes. There's where these countries that China just took over, and they're made that because China wanted to be this one big united country, especially in the event of war. So they have the largest army in the world, by the way. But different parts of the country, they speak different dialects. They have different. The cultures are different. Their food is different. In northern China, they eat a lot of beef, lamb.
Is that
and a
like
lot of milk.
Szechuan province?
Szechuan, yes.
The northern, right?
Northern, yes. Very cold.
So we talk about stories. I'd love to hear, for everyone out there, I'd love to hear like a mind-blowing story, something that you experienced, something that you went through that, people in the West would probably never imagine in a million years that could happen. Do you have one of those for me?
I have some.
So I got one right off the bat. So my ex-girlfriend, at one point, one of my ex-girlfriends, her father was from China, and she lived in Hsinchu, which is like where, it's kind of like Silicon Valley of America, where they can make all the computer chips in Taiwan. But yeah, her father was from China, and she told me, and he was in the army in Taiwan. I think he was a high-ranking officer. She told me that one time he he ate monkey brains.
Yes.
So like this is a real thing.
Yes,
and it's
I know about the
disgusting.
monkey brains.
So you she described it like this. They got a table, right? And they have these monkeys. They're live monkeys. They're alive.
Yes.
And they're chained up under the table, and the top of their heads are right there. And you saw
Holding the
the
table.
top of their head, and then you pour boiling water into their fucking brains, and you eat monkey brains.
Yes.
So she told me that her dad did that shit, and like I was just like, these are stories that Americans or West people from the West, you can't even imagine, but that shit happens. So
Right.
that's one story. I want to hear a story from you that would blow these people's minds.
Okay, so I'd taken a hotel contract and in northern China, and so everybody was asking me, "Oh, have you been to Exotic Street?" And I'm thinking, because I'm a shopper.
Sounds fun to me.
Yeah. Well, you know what they have? They have wonderful fabrics, and they have tailors that can make anything you want to just to your specifications.
Nice.
And because of my figure, I couldn't get a lot of stuff off the rack.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, Exotic Street, really? And I'm like, no. I'm like, well, what stores are there? Like, oh, they wouldn't tell me anything. They're like, you just got to see it, And so I'm like, okay. So I'm asking my friend, you guys take me? Okay, I'll take you tomorrow. So we're going down. We got dropped off downtown, and we took a taxi. And so we're going down these little side streets, and they're getting smaller and smaller. I'm like, where are you taking me? They're like, you'll see. So he's taking me down the back alleys, and now I'm getting a little I'm getting a little nervous. And so all of a sudden, I hear chickens, clamoring, and I hear dogs barking. I'm like, what was? So we get down to the street, and the first thing I see is these dogs that have been they've taken off, they've been skinned.
Oh
and
my God.
They're hanging up on these hooks, on these meat hooks, like a side of beef.
It's not what I thought it was. Go ahead,
Believe me, I didn't think it was that either. And so their stomachs have been opened and they've taken out the inside, and so they're just hanging there like slabs of beef, and they look like greyhound dogs. I don't know what kind of dogs, but that's what they look like.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, oh my God. And so then we're walking a little further, and I see a whole pile of turtle shells. And so, so that's,
This is exotic animal street, not exotic women street.
There you go. But they don't tell you. They just say it's just Exotic Street. So then I'm seeing exotic birds in cages. I'm seeing snakes. I'm just seeing all of these animals that are just, it's just really exotic animals that are being slaughtered.
They're like endangered, basically.
Yes, and that people can purchase. And there's also now snakes in like Vietnamese culture. It's considered an honor. Like if you go to a fancy dinner with, and they want to honor you, they'll take a live snake. They'll cut the heart out while it's still beating, and they put it in a glass and put, I don't know what kind of whiskey in it, but they give it to you, and you have to drink it. And that is considered a great honor.
You've been to Vietnam?
Yes, I lived in Vietnam as well. I performed. Yes, I lived in Saigon and Hanoi.
Wow.
Yes. I haven't seen that, but I was told by Vietnamese people that.
That threw me. Oh my God! I was like, "Yo, Exotic Street, let's go!" And I was like, "Disgusting."
Yes, I was mortified. I took pictures of everything that I saw. So I have
God.
hundreds of photos and videos.
Yeah.
Because you can't believe it. You can't even imagine it unless you actually see it.
Look, I love Taiwan. I mean, I've pretty much assimilated so much to Chinese culture, and I just, I can't wrap my head around, the lack of empathy for animals and dogs. Like, I fucking love dogs.
Me too.
And like, when I see that kind of thing, it makes me want to kill people. Like, it drives me fucking crazy because dogs are literally the nicest. Like they're amazing, loyal, friendly, nice beings, and
Yes.
they need to be treated not like that.
Right.
It just fucking drives me
Cats
crazy.
too. I mean, I love cats too. A lot of males don't like cats, but I did
I'm
have
allergic
a cat.
actually, so unfortunately. So.
And let me tell you, I adopted a little ginger cat when it was a month old, and that cat got me through the pandemic. I mean, because the isolation, I didn't leave when it was just an epidemic and only in China. I stayed through the whole pandemic. And so I'm telling you, this cat was I talked to this cat like he was human. I'm like, his name was Bourgeois. I'm telling you, if it wasn't for him, I think I've gone mad, because it was terrifying and I was isolated. It was only
You were locked in your place?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about, you want to talk more about the pandemic, your experience in China?
Okay.
Like
yes,
the most,
in
like,
China.
I've only seen it on TV and like, I was like, like, oh my God, like what I saw, because I watched this channel called China Uncensored. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. His name is Chris Chappelle or Chappell.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about, and there's a couple of guys called Lao Wai something, and these guys lived in China, and they actually love China. Both their wives are Chinese. They talk about their experience in China, and they, when Xi Jinping started to get more and more, become more and more of a dictator, an anti-West and anti-foreigner, they were like, it's not safe for us anymore, so they left. So if you want to talk about your experience in the pandemic experience in China,
Okay.
love to hear that.
Well, I had taken.
We're gonna have to do this again, man. This is like
Sure.
there's
Too much
gonna have to be
information to
episode
cover.
2, 3, 4, like the Micki Murphy series of like you got so many stories. Like
Yes.
we could just talk. I could literally talk for hours.
I'm writing a book now, and
Hell yeah.
I'm going to also include my pictures.
Okay.
My
When you finish it, come back on the show. We'll plug it.
Yes. So when the pandemic happened, I was on a hiatus from music because actually the economy was slipping everywhere, and so the music contracts. So when you're living in a foreign country, you have to be able to be sponsored. And so like as you did with the teaching, I started teaching while I was performing.
Yeah.
I was preparing for it because I could see that the economy was slipping a little bit.
Right.
And so while I was performing, I believe it was in Hanoi, Vietnam. And so I got my license to teach
Nice.
online.
Yeah.
So I got 120 hours.
I did my TOEFL.
TEFL?
Or TEFL or
Yeah.
TESOL or teaching
yeah.
English second language.
Yes, that's what I got. And so I got 120 hours, which was required. Then I got 40 more hours, 160 hours. So when I finished my contract, went back to China, and I decided to start looking for a teaching. I had never taught, and I really wanted to teach adult English, but there wasn't that big a market for it as there was for children.
Right.
So I got a job teaching at a training center, and it was 3 to 12-year-olds after school. Training centers after school.
Bushiban.
Yeah, and so that broke me in, and I worked for it was Chinese training center. And so when the pandemic broke out, I had a year's contract with them. So as my contract was coming to an end, I let them know that I didn't want to renew my contract. And so the first thing they did was, okay, you have to move out of our apartment. You have 30 days.
Damn.
So
Yep.
it was fine because I went to Shanghai.
So the apartment was part of the deal, right?
Yes.
They for English, the school paid for your apartment, right?
Yes, they pay for
Yeah.
your apartment. You have insurance, the whole nine.
Yeah.
Even and meals during the school hours.
Yeah.
So I was going to transition. I had been performing on almost on a yearly basis at the Waldorf Astoria in Shanghai, which is is historical. It's one of the top venues.
That's where I stay right now.
On the Bund.
I can't afford the one in New York. The one in Vegas, price is right.
Right.
But how expensive is the one in China to stay at?
Very well. It's very expensive, but I didn't live there. I had an apartment, but it's very expensive, and it's a historical hotel. Is what is it? One of the first hotels was. It's very old, and so if people go there to tourists
Nice.
from all over China and abroad. And so I was meeting with the GM to talk about my contracting with them. And I was living in a city called Quinshan, which is like right outside the Shanghai limits, because apartments, I had a huge apartment that was, very affordable. And so I had taken the train into the city. This was during Chinese New Year's when it first began.
Mm.
And so I'm in the train station. I see more people than Chinese New Year's. Millions of Chinese are traveling at the same time.
Oh my God.
And so I was in the train station. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at all these people. And so I took a couple of photos. So I go into Shanghai, and I get a hotel room that's near the Waldorf, because I couldn't afford to pay for it. So I meet with the GM, and so we're talking about the start date, blah, 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 my contract. And so then after that, I go and hang out with my friend. I stay overnight, and then I take a train back from Shanghai to Quinshan. So it's about a 40-minute train ride. So I get home, and I'm all happy.
Yeah.
And so I check my emails, and there's an email that's written in Chinese. It's in red, white, and blue. So I'm thinking it's a happy Chinese New Year. So I'm reading, and they're like, there's a new virus, and it's it's very, and I'm like, what?
Shit.
So I'm translating. I'm like, maybe this isn't translating well.
Yeah.
So then the only English channel I had was CNN. So I turned on CNN, and they're talking about Wuhan and how this mysterious virus, people are getting
That's the
sick.
only English channel you had is CNN, right?
The only English channel.
Oof.
Yes.
You don't get to see the other side.
Well, no.
One perspective on everything.
Right. And not only that, you can't even get onto online. So many sites are blocked in mainland China. You can't have Google, YouTube,
Right.
Facebook. Everything is blocked.
And this is for Chinese citizens too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's ways of getting around it. You have to get
VPN.
a private VPN.
I know. I have.
Yes.
I have a friend who lives in Shanghai right now. He lived when he was my friend in when we were in Taiwan together, and he pretty in shape guy, and he got a job. I mean, he tried not to teach English, so he because he didn't even want to do it. That's every foreigner's goal. I mean, I taught English. I was like, damn, how can I live here and not teach English? That was
right.
That was the level up goal. You did it. You did it from day one. You were living the life. But he eventually got a job as a bouncer, and I'm not gonna tell you how many girls he banged, but anyway, it was good for him. And he's just like, come on in. Okay, one, two,
been
three,
there
four.
with all of my musicians.
Right.
They all had local girls, and
Yeah.
some of them ended up getting married.
He's married now.
Right.
He got himself a little hottie. Good for him. Shout out to Kyle. He got himself a little hottie, and he's got a kid now in China. And every time I talk to him on the phone, I'm like, what's fucked up what they're doing? I'm like, and he's like, he always says this one phrase: "This is China,"
Right.
meaning you can't fucking go against them.
Exactly.
You can't say anything bad. There's nothing you can do about it because this is China.
That's right.
That's their excuse. You can't fuck with us. You can't question us.
Right.
You can't do anything about it
Right.
because this is China.
Right.
That's how fucking powerful they're. And he says that shit to me, and I'm like, damn, they got you brainwashed.
No, it is a fact. If you're living there, I mean, you have certain freedoms that Chinese people don't have.
This is true.
They don't bother foreigners, especially if you have a strong passport.
This is true.
But during the pandemic, initially, like I said, I had gone into Shanghai and I stayed overnight. And I got home, and then I was here on the news. And so everything just quickly shut down. I mean, like and the city that I was in, like I said, it was like a suburb right outside Shanghai. They fenced in streets, they fenced in highways, so you couldn't get in or out of the city limits. They fenced us in.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, and so they came and knocked at my door, and I had to show my passport and my proof that I lived there. And so they gave me this little ID card, and I had to show it because there was a little store, convenience store, just adjacent to the apartment complex, and that was the only place I could go, to get your groceries and stuff. And so you had to show your ID.
Just to go there.
Yes.
Jesus fucking Christ. It's right across the street.
And you couldn't get back on the property without showing that ID. You know, I mean, so, and you could have food delivered. Now, aside from that, the initial lockdown wasn't as bad as I went through the second lockdown in 2022.
Okay, so the initial lockdown actually wasn't as bad?
It wasn't as bad to me. My experience wasn't as bad. I mean, of course, okay, I'm not going to say that the whole experience wasn't as bad because many people died, you know.
So I seen, as you know, from living here, I saw on TV as some people welding their door shut, like some officials. Did that happen?
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
So
Did they kill pets? Like, hey, you know what? You got to come to the quarantine. We're just gonna murder your pet because they're gonna starve.
Yes, and some people,
That's horrible.
threw their own pets out the window because they didn't know if they were carriers. You know, there was so much that was unknown about the virus.
Misinformation.
So, yes, people were killing their own pets.
My God.
Yes. So I mean, you can have this terrifying. Like people dropping like flies. You know,
people were just so people were actually dying.
Oh, yes.
From the virus.
Yes. And one thing about a virus is that eventually the virus is intelligent. It has to weaken so that the host survives. The only way the virus survives is if the host survives. So as it evolved, it got weaker and weaker, but to people who have compromised immune systems and other health issues, it could be
okay. So let's talk about this because so in China, your experience, people were dropping like flies, actually being killed by the virus.
Oh yes, especially when it first came out at Wuhan.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was a perfect storm because it was Chinese New Year, the most popular country in the world, and this is their holiday where they are traveling all over the world to be with their families. So they're spreading it like spiders around the world.
How did they die? Because because when it first came out, I saw like some leaked footage because I watch a lot of. I'm up on Chinese news. There was like some shit that was like translated from China about some guy just walking down the street and just like falling over.
Yeah.
Did people die like that from the virus? They just like out of nowhere just walking and then boom.
Well, it wasn't quite that suddenly. In most cases, he probably had been carrying it for a few days or however long it would take. But the hospitals were quite overwhelmed with people that having severe breathing issues and and coughing and and diarrhea. There was just a host of symptoms. Yes.
Because I'm just gonna tell you my experience, and this is my experience in America, and it's actually funny because when it broke out, I was in San Francisco, where I used to live, and I was in Chinatown because it's a dope spot to be at.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was Chinese New Year, so I'm like, yo, let's go out, let's have some drinks, let's go eat some Chinese food. And that's when the news broke, and I was freaking out because I don't live too far from Chinatown, and I know that a lot of them were carriers, right? They came from China, they came back to America, and I'm like, fuck.
Right.
So I was a little worried, and but honestly, I don't think the disease was anything in America, and I'm just going to tell you my personal experience. So like I think it was more mental, like for us, like there was no symptoms, nobody actually really got sick from the quote unquote the virus. But I'm going to tell you my personal experience. Like I was worried, and I was so worried, and I was like trying to prepare that like I got it was before the vaccine was out, but it was like a flu shot, like, and then it was 2020. It was in like April or February, March. As soon as I got that shot, I developed severe breathing problems after I got the shot, mind you. And I said, I couldn't breathe, and my body started shaking, like, and I would have my heart would stopping and starting, and like I had all these weird symptoms that I've never had before in my life, and I was going out of my fucking mind.
You didn't go to the doctor?
What?
Did you go to the doctor?
Yeah, they said you don't have anything. There's nothing wrong with you.
Well, then you probably had just an allergic reaction to the shot. Actually, you know what vaccinations are? They inject you with a very tiny amount of the actual virus, so that your white blood cells will go to work and fight it off, and you build up an immunity.
Right.
So you had an allergic reaction.
Okay, so we have a total difference of opinion here. I'm just telling you, like, people are dropping like flies after they got the vaccine in America.
Well, a lot of people did die from the vaccine, but let me tell you, the virus is no less real.
Maybe in China, but I don't think it was in America. My opinion.
People living, senior citizens, and the thing about this mysterious virus, as it was when it started out, is you didn't know who was going to get sick. It could be a kid that could die and an old person live. They didn't know how did you determine who's going to live? But of course, old people and people who have some other extenuating health concerns were the most vulnerable. So there were nursing homes where they were just, and people were just dying. And places in New York, Manhattan, that were populated, where they literally had to bring freezers, the 18-wheeler freezer trucks, where they kept meat to store bodies because the hospitals were so overwhelmed that people were dying. There's people that have.
I mean, I'm sorry, I just disagree with you. Like, I was here, you were there. I think your experience was completely different than my experience.
I had friends who have died, and people that I know here and everywhere that I know people. Someone has lost someone to this virus.
So I know for a fact a lot of the bodies were dying. Their cause of death was just changed to COVID after they died, and they didn't die of COVID. I know that for a fact.
Well, there are in some cases, especially when it came to like homeless people, but if they may not have died of COVID, but if they tested positive, there's no way to if they had COVID, how are you going to say maybe they said it was COVID, but it's no less real.
I'm not discounting your experience.
Let me tell you what, this is and this is a conspiracy theory. Guess what they were studying at a laboratory in Wuhan?
How to create a virus to kill people.
They were studying COVID.
I know.
So
I know Fauci already got caught. He was like literally paying money, and he was involved in this program to create this. They created this shit. I think that America and China, I mean, we're going down a rabbit hole here, and a lot of people don't agree with me. I think that America and China conspired to create this shit because, I already know that the powers that be, their goal is to reduce the world's population by 70%.
That was also what I thought, because, there is a large, not only is it a large elderly population. China has an elderly population of 39%.
Wow.
So, with it being overpopulated and food shortages and the shortages of a lot of materials and life necessities. So, I'm not going to say but the virus itself existed, and it was a laboratory in Wuhan where it was being studied. So they could have, people make mistakes where human beings, one tiny drop and it could release, a potentially, deadly virus in the world.
All these things that we're talking about, maybe I'm not, saying that you're right and I'm wrong or vice versa. I think they all may be true concurrently. It's possible, and it's, you saw it firsthand that there was a virus that just actually caused, shortness of breath and caused people to suffocate to death. And I experienced that after taking a shot, not before. But here, this is also true. They've done studies of the vaccine, and the vaccine, to put the nail in the coffin, causes blood clots, which causes heart attacks. So we're both right at the same time.
Yes.
The virus was created to kill people. The vaccine was created to kill people. That's what I believe.
But it takes years for scientists to get the right virus. I mean,
the right vaccine too.
Yes, the right. That's what I meant to say. The right vaccine.
Right.
But so they're trying to quickly create something that the lesser effect. At least you don't die. You might develop heart disease or whatever. You might have a brain tumor, but you won't die. So they're trying to save people's lives. And so the experimental drugs. What they do, So
I think they did it on purpose. But that's just my opinion. Like, I mean, we don't have to talk about this. I mean, I'm listening to your experience. I don't want to argue with you. We're on the same team.
No, we're not. We're discussing. I'm enjoying hearing your perspective. But
I just know. I mean, I've seen so many doctors, so many videos, and so many people. I mean, here's a very good example. There was this thing's called, I think it's called instant death, or like some shit like that. So, like, it's like sports players that are under 30 years old. For the last 30 years, there's been only 3,000 instances of people like running and exercising and then randomly dying. Right? Okay.
Right.
Since the vaccine, there's been more deaths of like I think I forgot what it's called, instant death or like random death or something, like where people like exercising that are young that are just keeling over and dying. So in the past 30 years, about 3,000 people died of this. After the vaccine, in the past 3 years, there's been more than 3,000 people that have died of this. Of young people that took the vaccine. I know for a fact 100% it causes blood clots, and I have a knot in my arm from the shot that like coagulated that I've never had in my life before. And I just know that it causes blood clots and it causes heart attacks. I mean, I could show you many videos, but does not discount that the virus was real in China.
Yes, it was real all over the world. And when it first happened, I had all this time on my hands suddenly. So I started posting videos warning people that it was coming. It was going to be a pandemic. It was only an epidemic in China. And yes, they eventually closed the borders, but they'd already gotten out, So I knew that it was coming. So I started making videos teaching people how to make hand sanitizer, telling you to wear masks, wear gloves, cover your hair, wear glasses, cover your eyes against your eyeballs. This thing is airborne, and alcohol and whatnot. And so I was extreme in my prevention measures.
Right.
And a lot of people after the fact thanked me, like, Micki, you were right, because they didn't believe, they thought it was contained in China. But there's no way. How can you contain a virus when you've already got millions of Chinese people that are leaving the country like spiders in China? They've already gotten out. So it's already loose on the world. This death angel is. So, So I was posting these videos, but I did see it firsthand. And like I said, the first time, when it first, the first initial pandemic, I was pretty safe because they only had 69 cases in the city limits where I was. So, it was just, I was isolated, I was alone, but I had my cat to talk to. And, people were calling me and like, B, get out. A friend had an apartment in Japan. He's like, go to Japan. My initial thought was, okay, where can I go? Okay, I was thinking I would go to Bangkok and I would go to,
And they wouldn't let you leave.
Well, no, at first, before they closed the borders, I mean, I was trying to pack a bag.
Sure.
I was just panic stricken, and so I was like, where do I go? Where I got to get a visa to go, and so I rationalized. I said, okay, you need to calm down. You need to think clearly. And I'm like, okay, right now I'm in the safest place I can be. I'm in my apartment. I don't share quarters with anybody. No one's coming in and out of here.
Yeah.
I have good ventilation.
Right.
So this is the safest place I can be. Everybody is traveling.
Right.
So
the more you move around.
Yes. And so what if I packed a bag and left all the country and then they closed the borders? I was locked out. And so I have the short-term visa. I had to end up going back to America. And then plus I had a cat. And I had grown. I'm taking care of this cat, and so he was like my child now. So I'm like, I can't leave my baby, So
Sure.
And then another friend said, okay, you're helping people get out. If you need to call the embassy, they'll help you get out. So I call the embassy. I'm like, okay, I'm an American citizen. I'm in Queensland. How do I get out? And they're like, okay, well, we're going to have a 747. Okay, but you need to go to catch it. But it was for diplomats and their families. So whoever could get their, whatever seats were left, you could buy a ticket.
But sounds like a fucking movie.
Guess where you had to go to catch this 747?
In the epicenter where everyone was. Oh my God!
The city was already locked down, and they're like,
"That's a catch."
They're like, "If you can get into Wuhan, you might get a seat." And I'm like, "This." I'm going to go to the epicenter of the virus to maybe get on the flight. So if I don't get on the flight, if I could even get into the city,
that's crazy.
I'd be stuck in Wuhan. So I tried to think of every logical way. The bottom line was, you're stuck here, honey, make the best of it. Yeah. This you can get food, So that's what I did. And I just wrote it out with my cat. And so, actually music is the first thing to go because they don't want people, gather.
Live event.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So teaching was my only avenue.
Sure.
So after that first teaching contract, I mean, the Waldorf was off the table. So now I had to, then the school, the training center actually wanted me to come back, and they were like, well, we'll let you come back, but we're going to have to reduce your salary. I'm like, I'm not coming back here. So I started with the international school. So I got hired with a top international school. I was teaching kindergarten. And so when I got the job, there was a span of time between when they hired me and I actually was able to start work, because they wouldn't allow children of a certain age to start school, yet. The older children were allowed to go back, but, so the kindergarten was the last ones to go back. So they kind of, stretched it out. So I ended up working for an international school, and there were still a lot of things in place. They were, you had to get through getting into the subway. They would check you for fever and sometimes test you, and you had to show proper identification. So, all these people, these setups where they had hazmat suits and these, and so,
Jeez.
But things eventually slowly went back to normal. And so, when music finally opened up, I got the top gig at Conrad Hilton in northern China.
Nice.
And so I was just finishing a teaching contract with it was Canadian International, which was one of the top, and I taught first grade. But my initial contract, I didn't want to teach first grade because you have to give them homework, and I didn't want to do And so I told them, let's try a 6-month contract. And so it ended up perfect, because when that contract was up, I got the music contract. I was offered a 3-year contract with live-in,
Oh, they pay for your apartment and everything?
No,
like
I'm living in the Conrad Hilton Hotel.
Oh, hell yeah.
Suite on the 66th floor, room service,
But that was part of the music gig or the teaching gig?
That was a music gig.
Oh,
the
nice.
teaching gig, I had an apartment. But I signed a short-term 6-month contract to see how it would feel to teach first graders.
And what year was this? This was during
in
COVID, or?
Yeah, this was in 2021.
Okay. So this is when things were calming down at that point over there? Okay.
Yes. So I left, my teaching contract ended in like June when the school year ended. The kids were going on vacation. And so they begged me to stay. They're like, we love you, please stay. And I'm like, there's just no comparison. A music contract, living in a hotel, I love you kids, but gotta go. So I put all of my things in storage and just took my costumes and some street clothes and packed up and went to northern China. And
nice.
I moved into this Conrad Hilton. 6 months into my contract, guess what?
COVID again.
Right after New Year's, they got 9 cases in the city, and they're like, we're going to have to cancel your contract.
Oh my God.
You have 30 days to move out of the hotel.
Oh my God.
So
that's so I watched this show called China Uncensored. They always talk about this zero COVID policy. The policy like, no, we want no COVID at all. So 9 cases and they shut down the whole city?
They shut down the whole city.
Unbelievable.
So I quickly, it was so easy, especially for an American, to get a job teaching because they loved our accent.
Yeah.
And so they,
Trust me, I know.
So I got a job teaching within 5 days. 5 days after that, I moved. I shipped my stuff. I got a hotel room near the school. I packed up and I had my stuff shipped to this hotel. And then I flew down, and then I ended up finding an apartment that was right across the street from the school. And so my apartment is a beautiful high-rise, 17th floor. I had a 2-story apartment, 2-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, huge space. And
2-story?
Yeah.
What?
Yes,
awesome.
which was in a high-rise. I'm like, so it was like a big townhouse, 2 bathrooms, and so my whole kitchen was a window. It was a lovely apartment. And so I'm teaching. So it was so close that I would come home for lunch, my little backpack. And so I remember coming home. I think it was in March of 2021. March of 2022. I came home. My building surrounded. It's roped off with yellow tape, and there's people in hazmat suits and police officers. And I'm thinking, my first thought, as American, somebody have seen it.
Right.
So So I'm like, well, what's going on? They're like, you have cases in your building.
Oh my God, not again.
If you go in, you cannot come back out.
So like you were saying at the I mean, it happened, then you moved, you got a good gig at the Conrad, and then it happened, and you had to move, and now it happened again.
Yes, and this was in Shanghai. I moved from northern China back to Shanghai, and so so I had only been there for like 2-3 weeks.
Oh my God.
And so I call the school, and I'm like, look, okay, they're saying there's cases in my building. If I go in, I can't come back out. They're like, don't go in. We'll get you a hotel. We will buy you new clothes. Don't go in.
Shit.
So they're like, so I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm standing outside my building. I'm like, what do I do? So I realized I don't have my passport. So you can't do anything.
Fuck.
You can't get nothing. You can't.
I'm aware.
Yeah. Right,
Yeah.
So I called him back. I'm like, I don't have my passport.
I lost my
by now tears are streaming down my face. I don't have my passport. I have to go in.
Oh my God.
So, walking in, that was the beginning of the biggest nightmare of my life. So I walk in, I go to my building, I go to my apartment, and so I'm just waiting instructions, and no one spoke English. So initially, they just fenced in the community, so you could come down to take your trash out, and every day they would let you know. You'd hear these loud, from floor to floor, they have these speakers that would broadcast in Chinese, and you knew when it's time for your floor. They did by floor. You had to take the elevator down, go outside. They had these little stations that they put up with where they tested you, and then you had to scan the QR.
2楼1楼要出去啊
Oh my God!
3楼啊
You're
出去啊
reminding me of the
要
guy.
进去啊
Yes.
I said, well, you speak Chinese, right?
I speak no.
3楼
I don't speak Chinese.
Third floor
fluent.
出去 is 要 go outside.
Right.
3楼出去要检查你的健康啊 I was like,
Yes.
third floor, go outside. We need to check your health. I don't know. My Chinese is okay, but I worked at a nightclub where I spoke Chinese on the microphone, and I spoke with the customers. My job to, get everybody drunk and get hot girls on stage. So the whole crowd was. It's interesting. We're both in entertainment. I mean, that was my goal from to go to teaching to be able to do something fun on stage. You were there from day one.
I didn't start teaching until my last 3 years, 4 years in China.
You're lucky. Where you started at was my goal when I first got there. So you started out at the pinnacle.
Yeah, I mean, I was working all of the top venues, but I was based in China, but I like I said, I've been to Vietnam, I've been to Thailand,
That's
Dubai,
awesome.
the Maldives,
I didn't go
Russia,
anywhere. I just stayed in Taiwan.
Germany. So I was taking contracts other places, but I would return to China.
Yeah.
I loved living in China. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. What's your, because I worked at a nightclub and because I had to speak Chinese to my boss, to friends, to my coworkers, to customers. I just, had to learn Chinese. What's your level of proficiency of speaking Chinese?
Oh, very poor. It's survival Chinese.
Survival? Tell me what you know.
Oh no, I could tell a taxi driver, 一直走，左拐右拐，这里停，
Left and right.
谢谢。You know, I mean, I'm talking,
Okay.
but also, I mean, I was performing 6 nights a week. So, I
In English, and you were like...
so I was doing American music. I, of course, had to learn a couple of one of the biggest. I call it the Chinese national anthem.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now really,
You can sing a little bit if you want. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before.
I can take a sip of water.
Please feel free. This is gonna be awesome, guys. I've heard her sing this before. It's impressive.
Okay, so this song is translated to "The Moon in My Heart." It's a love song. Okay. 你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？我的心也真，我的爱也真，月亮代表我的心。你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？我的情不因我的爱不言，月亮代 了我的心，轻轻的一个吻，已经带动我的心，深深的一段情，叫我输引到怒气。